Great. Welcome, Kwe Upsaladagwe. My name is Neil Silcox. I'm the Faculty Excellence Lead for the Maple League, and I'm really excited to welcome you to the Maple League Pedagogy Panel, award-winning educators from across the ML. Our team, you can turn your cameras on now if you'd like. I'm going to do a real quick introduction, and we have so many incredible people that I've got to read my notes, so you'll forgive me for being a little bit, for not being off the cuff, but I can't miss anything. And I will say that there are some people who are dealing with a power outage issue and are just rejoining us, so we're going to play it by ear today, but I think it'll be great. I'd like to start by introducing, maybe you can give a wave when I say hey if you're here. Dr. Heather Lawford is an educational leader and researcher in Bishop's University Department of Psychology. She holds a Canada Research Chair in Youth Engagement, where her focus is on generativity in youth. That is the need for young people, as well as old people, to create their own legacies for future generations. Dr. Lawford's innovative and passionate teaching led her to becoming the recipient of Bishop's 2021 William and Nancy Turner Teaching Award. Up next is Dr. Juan López, has been an instructor in biology at Acadia University since 2014. His focus on collaboration with students shines through in his work with student TAs, in bringing former students back to the classroom to teach, and in co-writing research papers with students. 5 of his 6 recent publications were co-written by students. Dr. López has been recognized for his exceptional collaboration in 2020 when he received the Faculty of Pure and Applied Science Teaching Award, and in 2021 when he won the Acadia Alumni Faculty Award for Excellence in Teaching. Dr. Susie Andrews teaches East Asian religion at Mount Allison University, where her work extends off campus, across Sackville, and across the province. Her projects, in collaboration with the Early Learning Center Play School, Inc., with Sackville's Public Library, and with Salem Elementary, amongst others, seek to create spaces for children to be together and to be changed by being together while pursuing the things that really matter. Dr. Andrews is the recipient of the 2021 Herbert and Leota Tucker Teaching Award. Dr. Mary Sweetman teaches in community development at Acadia University with a focus on collaborative and community engaged work that fights inequity. She brings innovation and collaboration into her classroom. For example, she co-taught an incredible outdoor course during the pandemic. Dr. Sweetman is a 3-time recipient of the Acadia Student Union Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award and the 2020 Faculty of Professional Studies Community Engagement Award. And finally, Dr. Andrew Wilson, who may or may not have been rejoined us, has taught religious studies at Mount Allison University for the past 21 years, where he melds pop culture, religious doctrine, folk art, and more. His guiding principle, "Together We're Smarter," seems particularly apt for this Better Together session. Dr. Wilson is a recipient of the 2021 3M National Teaching Fellowship. Oh, not finally, we have Dr. Kalynn Wright. She was on a different page. Forgive me, Kalynn. Dr. Kalynn Wright teaches English and drama at St. Francis Xavier University, where she also directs social justice-driven plays at Theatre Antigonish, including Late Company by the incredible Jordan Tannehill, and This Is For You, Anna, a great play, which was co-written by the 6-person Anna Collective in the 80s. She has published a book, Political Adaptation in Canadian Theatre, in 2020, and has an upcoming book, No Baby, No Future, Performing Radical Motherhood. Dr. Wright is the recipient of the 2021 Association of Atlantic Universities Distinguished Teaching Award. And finally, our gracious host today, Dr. Jessica Rydell, teaches English at Bishop's University, where she also serves as the Stephen A. Jaroslawski Chair of Undergraduate Teaching Excellence. She's also the Executive Director of the Maple League of Universities and a celebrated teacher. Dr. Rydell is a 3M National Teacher Fellow and will be giving the keynote address at the upcoming 2022 conference for the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. Jessica, I'm going to throw to you.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for gathering us together with grace and kindness and compassion. And it sets the values that we've hoped to aspire to over the season of Better Together, over the winter semester. Neil has been the faculty excellent lead and has gathered us in bi-weekly connections and communities of practice to explore so many different issues, challenges, and joys in higher education. So Neil, thank you so much for being our gracious host and for just a wonderful season. This is the final event in our winter season. We will have a spring summer season coming out, but this is a wonderful way to capture and to tie up some of the loose threads of joy and hope that we've seen and been pulling at over the last year. So it is an absolute privilege and an honor to sit with this panel today. And this panel is part of a larger project that Neil and I engaged in at the beginning of the sort of winter semester in January. And one of the things that we had started off thinking about was the importance of celebrating our outliers and innovators, the people who were early adopters and change makers, who are often building things despite not because of the conditions within which they're working. And we thought originally that wouldn't this be wonderful to shine a spotlight, to celebrate, to give a voice to these incredible people because they animate the kinds of work that we say we do in higher education and fulfill a kind of social mission to our broader society. So we embarked with that as our intention. And over the last several months, we've learned incredible things and nuanced our understanding of creation, of innovation, and of imaginative approaches to higher education. And what we've learned in conversation with these wonderful humans is that it is as hard as it is celebratory. There is hard hope work to be done, that it is not just a celebration that we're here today to engage in, but a kind of debrief, a kind of candid space for us to think about the conditions within which we work, create, and innovate, where we lose hope, where we sit in despair, and where we dust ourselves off and carry on. This is part of a larger project that I've sort of been steering about Hope University, how to build resilient systems so individuals don't have to be. And I have to say that I have learned so much in conversation with the panelists over the last several months, and I hope that we can share some of those insights today. So we're going to ask 3 questions to the panelists. They have about 3 minutes each to answer each one of the questions. And the first question we're asking is, what are the conditions that were necessary for you to go and build, to create, to innovate, to think differently, to dream a little bit bigger, to extend learning beyond the classroom, or to invite the community into your educational or research spaces? So what were the conditions necessary and present? What were the contexts that allowed you to flourish, to build, and to imagine? And I'm going to go in no particular order. I'm just going to put you on the hot spot. But if we can sort of share as a panel some of those conditions, that will be wonderful. So I'm going to start with Heather Lawford, because you are the first one on my screen. Heather, what were the things that needed to be in place for you to build the kinds of things that you have been able to do?
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Neil, for everything that you do to create these spaces for us to breathe and think and connect across the Maple League. And thank you, Jessica, for all the vision and hope that you bring into every space. I think you are one of the conditions that I've needed to be able to do what I do. I think having people who believe in you in the moments where you don't believe in yourself are really important. So I will start with that I've had a lot of colleagues who've sort of held me up when I was feeling like I couldn't hold myself up, and gave me the privilege of holding them up when they needed something as well. So for me, relationship is at the core of everything. But I also have an enormous amount of privilege. My position affords me privilege. The color of my skin affords me privilege. My upbringing has afforded me a lot of privilege. And that has allowed me into a lot of spaces to do things. And I think that should really be acknowledged, that my privilege, which I didn't earn, I didn't do anything to get, has given me a lot of things, and I need to work on how do I leverage that in the best possible way in order to support others, and how do I share that in a more equitable way than maybe it was before. And I guess I built the things that I wanted to have in my world. I built a research lab that I wanted to work in, and I built a knowledge mobilization program in collaboration with my peers because I wanted to work with them. So we built something where we could work together. And I guess I contributed to building things so that people I wanted in my space had a place in my space. So I guess, yeah, those are the things that come to mind for me. I'm actually really interested in what other panelists have to say.
Thanks, Heather. And just you captured the generosity of giving credit away, and also the generativity of creating spaces where other people can find themselves and grow and to flourish. So appreciate that you are perfectly consistent. You're living your best values and anchoring them in practice, which is amazing. Mary, I saw you smiling and taking some notes. Do you want to go next?
Well, sure. Heather, you just did such a beautiful job of capturing the conditions in which to do this work. So thank you. So I won't repeat what you just said, but maybe just add on to it. And add on to my also gratitude for being part of this group and yeah, being here today. So just adding on, so not repeating, is around that relationship piece of having colleagues and students to have really great conversations with, and to be open to those conversations, to make time for those conversations, which that time piece might come up later on as a barrier. And yeah, and I think for me, the conditions really are around those relationships and being open to those conversations. I feel really lucky and privileged to teach in a department with a lot of autonomy, that we're small and we really support each other in trying new things and learning from each other. And so I think that gives me a lot of space to be innovative in the classroom and with community partners. But with that autonomy comes a lot of responsibility. And so I think that that's also a really important piece of those conditions of like honoring that responsibility and living up to that responsibility. So yeah, so I think it's like the students and my colleagues, and also that one of my students talked about, Kenya Fifth, who is a co-op student with me right now, introduced me to a concept called possibility models. And it's like role models, but even better, that you see people like yourself within these places. And I think it goes back into that conversation that Heather started around privilege, and that I was privileged enough to have possibility models to show me great teaching from a very young age. And so I've had opportunity to witness and have wonderful teachers and guide me. And so I really stand on the shoulders of those before me. And I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Mary. And I just recall from our conversation when we recorded the podcast, the possibility model of being able to go and to teach outdoors with a mentor, with somebody in different kinds of ways. So extending those four walls into outdoor spaces and to find nature too as one of your possibility models as inspiration and as a co-teacher and co-inquirer.
That's right. As part of community. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Kalynn, I see you also sort of it resonating for you in your own work in social justice and theater. Do you want to talk about the conditions necessary for you to flourish alongside students and thought partners and community stakeholders?
Yes, and also to echo, thank you so much for bringing us all together. It's such a joy to be here today and to have these conversations. To build on this idea of community and possibility, for me, the biggest condition necessary is community, and specifically having theater and Ganesh on campus. But what was so surprising to me is that having theater and Ganesh on campus, it's not the physical building or the structure, not just having the stage and the seating, because really we can perform anywhere. All the world's a stage, right, Jessica? But to have that community. So Andrea Boyd's the artistic director, and when we were first in conversations about me directing a play, I actually ended up changing the play I was going to direct a month before I was slated. So I was slated to direct a comedy, a lighthearted comedy that was very much in need in February, but then wanted to change it in response to some cases of sexual-based violence on campus, and also to help show and perform support for student protesters and the student group that was forming, and these really important student voices, including Emma Kuzmic, who's a 3M student fellow who wrote a poem about the experience of student survivors. So she said, yes, we met for coffee, and it was less than a month. You know, the posters had been printed in the ads, and she's like, no, this, I'm on board, please go for it. So that group at the theater, to have an artistic director that really supports, to then have people, students coming, so it's very much a community theater. So students are involved as stage managers. They help with the set, the lighting, and then I had students audition and were the actors in the play. And then they did so much more. So they helped facilitate community outreach. We spoke with the Women's Resource Center in town. One of the students who was performing had worked with the Women's Center, so she helped organize conversations about trauma, because the play was very triggering for some of the people that were in the play, as you can imagine, that felt so powerful about being part of this project, about this is for you, Anna, had also experienced sexual-based violence themselves. So there's a lot of work of care going into that. But and I directed the play, it was very much a communal piece. It was a collective piece, but that was the actors, the director, the stage manager, lighting, set, Andrea, and then extended when we got to perform to everyone in the audience. And I think that was the big impact of the play, and also often of theater, is what happens when you actually get to perform and how those spectators respond. So to have Emma Kuzmic start the play with sharing her poem, and the whole theater stand up in a standing ovation and clap, to just have that show of support all together in one space, to say, we care, we believe this is important to us, we support you, we believe survivors, was just so powerful. And I think theater is just such a great example of the importance of collaborative learning and collaborative activism, that we necessarily need a group to do this type of activism, to do this type of action. And then it extended further, that audience members ended up creating their own plays inspired by this piece for later shows. I had faculty members amplifying the show and drawing attention to it on listservs, which really helped to bring in even more students. And we had a record number of students attend the play, which again was just, for me, such a good measure of impact, of who's there and how are they responding. So absolutely, for me to sort of, I think, build on this importance of group and collaboration would be community, and how community can come together.
And that's so powerful, Kalynn, the conversation about co-design, right? That everybody, just the spectators, the actors, the costume designers, everybody is responsible for coming in and adding something and producing something that couldn't happen otherwise. And that based in the community, but with that really strong notion of co-producing meaning, just shines in the work and the activism and advocacy that you do. So that's just, it's so tremendously inspiring. And I think, resonates for Juan Carlos, who is doing advocacy, activism, and co-design in, microbiology and soil analysis and in labs, and in a very different kind of disciplinary setting. But I think fundamental values resonate. Juan Carlos, do you want to talk and build on Kalynn and Heather and Mary?
Of course, if I manage to unmute myself. I'll try not to repeat, but I also want to express how grateful I am to be part of this group. be part of these discussions. It has been wonderful. And I'm really happy to be here today. So I just wanted to say that piece. The work with the collaboration and the community is actually very important. It has been very important, and I think for me, what allowed me to have that was actually finally have a continuing position. So that was something that was really difficult for me, and I know it's something that is very difficult for people who, like me, came to Canada later, and tried to establish that career, which is extremely difficult, right? But having that position was very, very important. What I've been able to do is, well, first, I remember that when I started trying to develop new labs, and I knew I did not have, because I teach the introductory biology lab, so I have to teach all subjects, right? I don't have that expertise, but I knew my colleagues had it, and it was very easy. I invited students to join in projects and discussing with them, they joined, but also my colleagues, right? And I have yet to find the first time that I have gone and asked a colleague, well, would you be able to help me with this so that you do the lecture and we do this in lab, and and it was in that sense, it was so easy for me to implement that. And I remember somebody made a comment, I can't remember whom it was in my department, but said, oh, that's never been done. It's like, well, has anyone tried? Because it's very easy, and I have discovered with this that we can do it year after year, and everyone is happy doing it. It's just finding that. So those conditions, having that place and being able to ask was very important. Now, the part that I have found very rewarding for me as a teacher, and as a person, has been watching the students grow and believe in themselves. So in the way that I had that my labs work, I work with an amazing team of teaching assistants who are undergrad students, who are grad students, but they are all young, and they have to teach with me. And the way that I work with them is like, well, I will help you, I will provide the materials, I will give you everything I have, so that you can use it. But I say it in the words of my colleague Heather Smith, you have to own it. It's your class, let's do it, right? And there is another piece that I think is really important for the students and for my TAs to know. Is like, I want you, I as much as you are comfortable with, you have to bring your own self. You have to show them how you, and I actually made a point of them saying, why are you standing in front of that room? Well, because I took this course last year, and I spoke to Juan Carlos or what have you. I'm a grad student, so I have to do it. It's part of my, but regardless of how they ended up there, I want them to show the students why they are there, and more importantly, so that the students can see themselves in those TAs that are standing in front of them. And I purposely tell them, we have like junior and senior TAs, and some of them will mark, some of them will be you're just answering questions. But one of the things that I've tried to do with my students is so that the first year students see themselves reflected into these people, that are only 1 year or 2 years ahead of them, and some of them are grad students, some of them are older. We have everything, right? But I try to humanize that aspect of it. It's like, I'm here because I know biology, yes, but I'm here because I'm all these other characteristic of my personality, and that's how I ended up here. So that piece of collaboration and bringing yourself to the classroom is something I've been able really to develop. But again, it has taken time.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. And it resonates with the possibility model that Mary introduced, right? That the students can see themselves, they can see other kinds of models in front of them and can learn from one another. And, Susie, I know we've had conversations about bringing our authentic selves to spaces, to our classrooms, to our research, to our community engagement. Do you want to talk a little bit about what conditions are necessary for bringing yourself to your work in undivided ways?
Yes, I wanted to drive over to Dr. Juan Carlos López's office as he was speaking and saying, you know what? For me, it's taken a while and I'm still not fabulous at this yet to be as I am. And right, because I often feel like, oh, this is not the right place for me. Okay. Like the things in my heart, sometimes they don't fit, right? Sometimes I feel like I don't quite belong here yet. And being creative and being part of a community means being here as I am. And so I think Dr. López would be a great professor for me. And I was so excited to hear that he creates that space in his classrooms. I wanted to add a second condition for me is money. So for example, anytime there's been a lot of money, I have felt, actually, I usually lose heart and try to step away from opportunities in the last minute. So that's where being as I am and having folks who say, no, we'll go forward. We can fail together. That's important. But money, I would say, is super helpful for innovation and community partnerships. So like there's NBIF funding, right? Or not, there isn't is the point. There isn't enough for all of us probably. Anytime there has been, that's made a difference. Or the CWIL, Cooperative Education Work Integrated Learning money. I'm just saying sometimes a pot of money can invite imagining in ways that feel just if you stretch just enough, that imagining might become true. So I just wanted to add money, even though it's sort of a win-lose and I feel not quite like myself. So being okay to be myself, like in Dr. López's class, and then money.
Thank you. And the hospitality that you think about intentionally as you design these spaces. How do you welcome people in? How do you make them feel at home? How do you create senses of belonging? One of the things that you do as an advocate is you pay students and you pay for resources for children who wouldn't otherwise have access to toys and to books. And so I think that that's a really important condition to be able to innovate, is to be able to pay and to compensate and to value other people's work. So that's so powerful. Thank you, Susie. Last but not least, Andrew Wilson from Mount Allison is joining us without camera because of the power outage to save his data. But Andrew, can you talk to us a little bit about the conditions necessary, building upon the other panelists on what it means to create and innovate? What are the things that need to be in place for you?
Yeah, thanks, and it's a great question, and I really appreciate people's comments, and I certainly can see myself in all of these different places, and very much champion the same kinds of ideals. So to build on that, I would say, well, my mantra has always been, continues to be, together we're smarter, right? So I really think that collaboration, connection, relationship are so important in moving that needle, in figuring out how to approach our goals in really effective and meaningful ways. But I would add to that and say that idea of togetherness works so well when there's a lot of diversity, when you're connecting with people across traditional boundaries, when you're really getting out of your silos and you're thinking about university learning as something that permeates the community, as something that reaches back to your own personal experience and brings that forward, that connects with things that you might not necessarily understand to be academic or even about traditional learning, but are so much about how we get excited and inspired and then those things that really trigger creativity. But the other thing to say is that when we're talking about collaboration and being together and doing this stuff as a group, it's so important to cultivate trust. So in my context, I think that we've got, as faculty, we've got a lot of leeway in terms of trying out new things,
because we have a good sense of trust in our community that it's okay to take risks. You know what? You want to take over a storeroom and paint it crazy colors and call it a classroom, then okay, you go for it and we'll see what happens. So we've got this sense that yes, we'll take risks, like Susie was saying, we'll fail together, but often that's not the way it turns out. That the results might be unlikely, but they can always be exciting. So the values that come from collaboration, I think, are really significant to think about the stuff that we need to build onto that sense of togetherness.
Thank you, Andrew. And the notion of risk and the notion of trust leads really beautifully into the second question. And the second question is in some ways the sort of reverse of what are the conditions necessary to innovate, to create, and to build, is when change agents go into the world and go in to make things different, or to try something new, or to take a risk. Often the experience is coming up against systems, structures, and policies, sometimes invisible, sometimes visible, in the desire to change and innovate, that either shut down or slow down or frustrate people who can sort of see the goal, see the joy, see the hope, but sometimes get mired in structures and systems. And I wonder if we can think about, as a panel, both individually and together, making visible some of those systemic barriers or structures that slow down the creativity, imagination, and joy, how we can surface them and make them visible and identify them. Not people, not personalities, but systems themselves that really block or create more difficulty than necessary to build and to create. And so, Kalynn, can I start with you about the ways in which you've come across these either invisible barriers or ones that you realize, yes, I'm going to have to tackle that at some point. I'm going to have to decolonize or deconstruct or dismantle in order to get to where you wanted to go in co-design and co-production.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big question. So I'm going to just start with something very small, but as actually huge. The biggest factor for me is time. And there's lots of different pathways for applying for funding and money. And I completely agree with Susie that money is a big factor. But actually for me, I'm finding that the resource of time is so unquantifiable, in that there's almost nothing to apply for where that just gives me time. So I just need some time to read and to create. And that's very hard. And it's also very hard to validate in the way that the system is currently running. So that is really tough for me. There's one thing that I've found with my university to apply for time. I've applied for it, but it's 2 years and then that's it for my whole career, where you get a course release. So that's very difficult. And I do. So I have some dreams that I'd like to do, especially with theater and acting and more creation along that side, but it's time. And then the other factor is numbers, but not in a money way for me as a theater person, or as someone interested in the arts, but in terms of student numbers. So that's very much, I feel, dictated by those parameters when I'm creating and doing curriculum design, is how many students can this attract? And I often do very exciting work with smaller numbers. And that, again, is very difficult under current systems. So those are my two biggest factors. I know they're not particularly exciting numbers or student numbers in time, but it really is the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, and I saw the panelists sort of nodding with great sympathy as we struggle with time, and time, as Hamlet says, is out of joint. Certainly in the professoriate, we seem to have more demands, the work is unrelenting, and we have less time on our hands as we go. And how do you manage that, and how do you slow down? And in fact, the Maple League Book Club, this is a shameless plug for this spring, is the Slow Professor. thinking about how we change our
Good
mindset,
book.
behaviors, and attitudes around time at every age and stage and level of the professoriate and within the academy. So yeah, thank you so much.
I like
Yeah.
how that book is purposefully short.
Yes, exactly. It's 80 pages. It's a manifesto. It is a quick and easy read because it frees up your time to percolate, which is often not what we have in our careers. Yeah, thank you, Kalynn. Juan Carlos, I saw you sort of nodding emphatically about the sort of insights from your fellow panelists. Would you like to sort of surface a couple of the structural or systemic barriers that you've encountered in your efforts to decolonize your lab and STEM?
Well, yeah, of course, that time is always an issue, but not to all over the same topic. One of the things that I have found, with the students that were almost falling through the cracks, right? But somehow we managed to get to them and help them. And then I wanted to go back to that idea of trust. It is very difficult, and I have found this with students that belong to your kind of to your not your those that had a very hard time getting to your classroom. By the time they get to your classroom, the effort has been so grandiose, I would say, that they don't necessarily have the confidence that they need, and not even the enough confidence to tell you, that they need that help, and it's and I believe, and I honestly believe it's on me to try to break that barrier, and let them know that this is what we're here for, and I'm actually doing that more in my emails, said this is my job, and I actually type it, and I said my job is to assist you, so come, I will assist you, right? But I find that that I cannot put my finger exactly on what it is, but we definitely need them to know that we are here for them and we can assist them, and we may need more resources from the university, but we need them to know first that we are here and we will meet you, but if we don't know you need that, it's really hard. And it has been transformational for some students when they, when I finally get to hear what's in their mind and what's stopping them, and then I realized, well, but that's, it's I can help you with that, you belong here. And that is the one thing that I would put my finger on. They have to feel that they have a space here and that they belong here. And that is one thing that no matter how many things we do accepting students and getting them in, they really truly have to believe that they belong here. And we may not be doing, as institutions, a very good job at letting those students know you have a place here. And that's what I try to do.
I think you're right, Juan Carlos, that we say that at the Academy that we are sort of inclusive, but we actually create inhospitable spaces with the structures and the systems that students have to navigate that are not user-friendly, that are in fact quite daunting and overwhelming, even in the basic daily adulting, much less, the faculty also trying to navigate systems that are inhospitable and often invisible. So how to find those pathways and to find as students, as faculty, as staff is really, really difficult. So we do have, I agree, much more work to do to create hospitable and inclusive spaces of belonging, at the systematic and structural level. Mary, I see your brain working overtime, thinking about it at the structural or systemic level from your lens of community development. What kinds of barriers and policies do you need to dismantle in order to do your work?
Yeah, I think, listening to the piece around hospitality is so important. But if students don't see themselves within their faculty, and so we need different hiring practices, we need to really look inwards to say what can we dismantle systemically. And I think one of the big parts of this is equity training on every level within the institution. And so really being open to dialogue with each other at different levels around what does implicit bias mean really, truly, and have good examples, really unpack our syllabi to say what is discriminatory within our syllabi even, or what's not accessible. What's not accessible at the registrar's office, what's not accessible on our pathways and our wayfinding on campus. And so I think that I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think, I think about one of the biggest barriers is I get in my own way all the time. And so I need to do this work. I need to be in constant reflection as an educator. And I think we all do within our different departments around what is it that we could be doing to instill a learning environment, always be checking in with each other and not be afraid to call each other out in soft and comfortable and uncomfortable ways. We need to be uncomfortable in this work to make change and progress. I don't know if I've said that well, but I think part of this is like learning and being open to change.
Thank you so much, Mary. And that critical reflection piece, both about how you get in your own way, I think that resonates for me a lot. And the ways in which we connect with colleagues and connect with different kinds of thought partners around critical self-reflection is an essential piece that we don't teach well, we don't assess, we don't evaluate, we don't assign, either in our classrooms or in our own promotion, evaluation, and review. And yet it's one of the most important ways for us to transform both individually and together. And I think that that's a really big missing piece that came out in conversations that I had with all of you one-on-one in our podcast series this semester. And Andrew, I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about critical reflection. We talked about that in some of your projects with quilt making and with pilgrimages. Could you talk a little bit and build on Mary's insights into the ways in which we engage in critical reflection, both at, assigned, but also for ourselves?
Yeah, sure. No, I'd be happy to. And for me, this is so much about creating the best, richest kind of community at the university, because when we're talking about learning, when we're talking about education, we're talking about rich and full human beings who are connected with others and are in relationship and in community already. And they come into our classrooms and then we compartmentalize. And so and of course we do, right? The structure is necessary, and in not just in universities, but in all sorts of ways. We need the structure. But I think that we need to be also very attentive to the way that the structure works against that fully integrated vision of what it is to be a human person in community. And that means really calling out our bureaucracy, calling out the way we divide up and compartmentalize our academics, calling out our administrative fetishizing, right, of our processes, all of these kinds of things that end up working against the full vision of the person. And the way I've found that really helps to do that is to invite students, and this is about hospitality again, but I think it's also about inclusion and about recognizing what diversity means in a student's experience, and really inviting them to reflect on who they are and what they bring to this process and how they want to engage with it, right? So rather than that becoming from the instructor, this is what I would like you to know by the end of the course, inviting students to bring their own learning journey into the classroom and into the learning community, I guess. It's more than just a classroom. And that does involve reflection. And often students think of reflection as a way of reporting, right? I did this, I did that, I've been here, I've thought of this, and whatever else. But I think that and I think we all know that there's a much deeper level to reflection, and I think that integrated sense of who we are and what we bring is what that reflection is tapping into, and what's really exciting to think about what's possible when we really take learning and education forward from there.
Thank you, Andrew. And I see Heather sort of nodding about the ways in when, especially when you were talking about sort of thinking about the structures administratively. I love that phrase, the fetishization of policies or of procedures. Does that resonate for you, Heather, in your own experiences, thinking about making visible the structures and systems in place that are slowing down innovation or act as barriers to hopeful new spaces?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for everything that the panelists are saying. And I'm reflecting on how this very question is helpful for me in dismantling some of the barriers that I face. And I'm sort of trying to write notes for myself of what's the biggest barrier that I face. And I find my need to feel hope stems in somebody being willing to listen to me tell what I think is the truth, or what my truth is. And the work that I have to do to protect all of my own ego and other people, and how do I say this system isn't working for me without being attacked or without hurting somebody who I know is working extremely hard and shouldn't be attacked because they're doing incredible work. So where are the places where we can tell the truth about what is working and what is not working, and use our voice for people who are too afraid to say, for good reason sometimes, what is working and what is not working for them? I think for me is the biggest barrier. And when somebody listens to me and says, yeah, let's talk about how we could, make things better. Maybe I could tell you what my perspective is so you can see why it's happening that way. And maybe together we can find a better way. Even if we fail to find a better way, I still have this relief and energized of, okay, then, let's keep at this. The conversation is open. So for people to say, what are the barriers? And I'm listening, and it's not about attacking. Oh, I lost my video. See what happens when you tell the truth? And then I think also just the silos of a university system, of how many times I've messed up because I didn't understand somebody else's role and job, and I stepped on it inadvertently, and therefore slowed things down. And if I listen more and seek to understand more other people's roles and jobs and goals and agendas, perhaps I would not have failed as often as I did. So I guess I'll stop there and take cue from my camera.
Thank you, Heather. And, I think it resonates for, oh, you're back, for a number of threads that keep coming up in this panel, where Mary was like, we need to sometimes call out with kindness and sometimes candid conversations that are uncomfortable, and sit in the discomfort of systems that are broken, and systems that lovely and well-meaning humans with all of the goodwill and good intention are trying to operate within, but the systems themselves are acting as barriers or blocks. And some people have internalized them and are accidentally rolling them out in ways that they haven't done critical reflection. So I see the sort of threads run throughout that panel. Susie, I saw you really also responding to Heather and her insights. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the
simply, yeah, I just want to say, I don't know how to do a lot of things. And I don't even know how I'm supposed to know how to do them, okay? And I'm not trying to absolve myself of responsibility. I have noticed that when I'm trying to do something new, it can be hard to know what I'm supposed to do beyond the very practical, like glue, picture books, driving through town, honking the horn at people, hello, making a special delivery. Like that comes easily to me. But universities are really confusing to me. It's not because the humans at my university aren't full of love, passion. I simply do not understand very well. And so luckily it's not my job to I don't mean to pass it off. I'm saying I'm not sure what the solution is or where I'm supposed to learn how universities work, but I cannot see the whole thing from above yet. And I also can't see it from below. And so like just practicalities, even when you're innovating, I would like to call myself that now, and I shall, as an innovator. Sometimes I just practically don't know what to do. And again, I'm drawn to the hearts and voices of my colleagues here, because I'm like, I wish you were my teacher. Andrew Wilson's like, I am here for you, just call more. But I don't know who to call when I can't figure it out, and I don't want to tick people off. And like, I am not that quick. And so like, I have made the same mistake repeatedly this year with the same folks trying to navigate our university. And that's tough. And I'm not sure if there's an owner's manual, and probably sounds like there is an owner's manual, you didn't read it. But I get really confused by how universities work and who you're supposed to talk to when, and which person is in charge of what. And sometimes sometimes it's hubris on my part. Like, I think I can do this, I will do it. And if I slowed down, I heard a colleague say that I didn't want to repeat their name in case they didn't, but Dr. Lawford was saying some heartache could have been spared. I think slowing down is good, but when you have such fun on the horizon in the morning, slowing down's hard too. I will join the book club. And I wish universities had owner's manuals for novices, right? And I wish I had a full-time professor teaching me how to be a professor all the time. And I do have great mentors, one of whom is Andrew Wilson right here.
Well, and Susie, I think that's really important to note is nobody taught us how to do this. And, you know, we are learning in our discipline, and we're experts in our disciplinary knowledge, but we are not experts in governance, in collegial governance, in Senate statutes, in how to do a check requisition, how to balance a complex budget, how to do grant applications for community-based organizations outside of Tri-Council. Like, nobody taught us how to do this. And yet, because of the academy and this sort of notion of knowledge and expertise and an impervious armored structure, we're supposed to figure it out. And I think that has caused the famous or infamous imposter syndrome, where we're all sort of working sort of quietly behind the scenes being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? And being able to connect to humans who are compassionate, open to process, who are willing to be vulnerable and to fail alongside you is one of those really important interventions. And I think we've all benefited from multiple possibility models in our own lives, to borrow Mary's. The final question, and I did want to be able to go really quickly around this table, is to ask, what advice would you give? And I've listened to some of the advice already. Slow down, ask for help, find possibility models, connect with mentors at every age and stage, including reverse mentors. Heather's listen better, Andrew's critical reflection, Kalynn's notion of time and being able to even just name it as a challenge and as a barrier. But just a very quick, if there's something, one or two pieces of advice that you would give to people embarking on their journey, whether they're, a first year contract faculty or an upper year full professor who are just wanting to do something different and to imagine something that is possible, what advice would you give them? And we'll just do a really quick tour to tab. And I guess we'll start where we started before. So Heather, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to give us some advice on what you would share?
I think we should all just do that. So I don't wear jewelry, but I've started putting on jewelry, not because of how it puts the outfit together, because I don't even understand that, but because they're pieces that somebody's given me that I want to hold close to who I am that day. So I gave a presentation about my research, and I wore a necklace from my aunt because I was thinking of myself as her legacy and the love that she gave and the care that she gave to everyone around her. And it was just this wooden red heart, but I wore it because I was like, this is who I am today. So that's probably, if you find something in the morning as you're getting ready that reflects the piece of your identity that you really need to connect to get through what you have to get through. I would say that. And the other thing I would say is you're already enough. Like, you're good, you're fine. And if you want to do more, that's great. But everybody listening today, whether you're on the recording or you're here, I see your names. Thank you for showing up. It means a lot. For someone to come and listen to you, it makes a difference. It helps move things forward. And it's maybe just like everybody needs to know that what you've done is enough. And if you want to do more, you can. But if you don't do it. You're enough. You're done if you want to be, or until you don't want to be.
Oh, I love that. Internalize a sense of worthiness. Yeah, love that. Mary, I see you sort of responding. Do you have a couple of pieces of advice to share?
Yeah, I just thank you, Heather, for that. That was really helpful. I think my one piece of advice or leading on is get outside of the institution and have a tea with your community partners, with an organization that you have always wanted to know more about or feel connected to, and yeah, so be part of the community. See yourself as a citizen of this complex world.
Thank you, Mary. And that's probably even more important for us joining from small citizen universities and small citizen towns, right? To expand our connections and our relationships in our communities. Yeah, thank you. Kalynn, you are next on my list. Couple last thoughts about tips or advice.
One piece of advice I got that really stuck with me and that I try and think of every morning is to pay yourself first. So when I first started at St. FX, that just meant giving myself 30 minutes every morning to do my own research and do my own writing or reading. And now that means something a little different. It's more like pay my heart first. So what's something that I really want to do? That's not maybe, you know, attending the meetings or doing the reading or doing the things that are very pressing and feel good to check off, but what's something that's actually really driving me that I really want to get to? Maybe it's bringing in an artist. Is there an artist that I would love to have a talk with? Well, it's gonna be scary, but I'm gonna send them a message and see if they will, you know, have a conversation with me, come to my class, whatever the case is. And it's shocked me every time it works. But it doesn't necessarily get easier. It's still hard to pay my heart first or pay myself first, but I find that to be very rewarding and a piece of advice I just try and wake up with every morning.
Oh, that's good. Pay yourself first and wear talismans of hope and joy that connect you to people and to relationships. I'm writing all of these down. Andrew, do you want to share a final piece of advice or wisdom to those in the room, both virtual and recorded?
Oh, sure. I really like these ideas of finding places or rediscovering places of connection and meaning, and certainly not just places on campus, right, out in the world and in a much richer sense of one's experience. But the mantra that I have, I guess, failed to adhere to over the years, but continue to pursue is essentially less is more. Right? Because I think we do have this sense that we've got to be busy all the time, and it's better to do more and to be productive and to have all those plates spinning, right? And all of this kind of stuff. And I don't even mean doing less stuff. Sometimes less is more means aligning things so that they are connected and they do feed as well as take, right? So that less is more mantra has been something I've been puzzling over for many years, but certainly as a young faculty member, when I was just writing my lectures an hour before I was walking into the lecture, I mean, I would repeat this to myself: you have got to trust yourself, you know this stuff, you just less is more. You don't have to write some Baroque treatise on this particular topic in order to do a really good job. So it's that trusting yourself and really giving yourself a bit of a break.
Thank you, Andrew. And that resonates for Juan Carlos, talking about bringing your full self to those spaces in teaching and in research. Juan Carlos, do you have a piece of advice to share in the final minutes of this?
what just internalize yourself that what we do matters. It matters for not only for the content of your area of work, but also for the human connection and those students and those TAs and those colleagues. So what we do matters, and remind yourself of that.
And Juan Carlos, thank you for that. I think it's really hard, especially, as we go to the end of the semester and to the end of the academic year, and T.S. Eliot saying that April is the cruelest month. I had a conversation this morning where I said, I don't know if anything I do matters. Like, I have that feeling of sadness. And you all just boosted up that hope quotient so much. And Susie, I wonder if you've got the final word, the final piece of advice, as one of the beautiful hope warriors around this table. What do you want to share with this group?
If it does not expose you to vulnerability in ways that will cause harm, then do the scary secret parts of you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I spent so long trying to pretend to be one kind of professor, right? That actually it's quite a relief to just embrace the parts of me that I thought wouldn't fit. And it turns out they're okay here. Like, I do like picture books very much. I love sitting on the floor. There is nothing that makes me as happy as the fizz and pop of a preschool. I'm so sorry. Universities are great when they're in preschools. The point is, like, if it is not something that exposes you to great risk of harm, right? And there's a part of you you've been a little nervous about, there can be, at least in my experience, some real richness and possibility in just going there. And I know I'm not the only one who's had that experience, but wow, right? What a gift.
It is a gift. And this panel has been a gift at a time where we have had a really rough couple of years and a really rough semester. And it is really, really easy to lose hope and to sit in despair. I think that what this panel has illuminated for me today is the importance of sitting in the discomfort, even as we imagine what is possible and hopeful, and that we can have tough conversations and we can make visible structures and systems that are inhospitable, and that even by having the conversation, it creates bigger and better spaces for belonging. And I think that, all of the insights and all of the wisdom that you've shared and all of the messy journeys that you have embarked upon with so many thought partners that are here, but also embedded in your classrooms and communities, just make for a richer space. So as I selfishly write a book on Hope University, you have all animated the fundamental values necessary to build systems that are resilient so that we don't have to struggle and despair as much, that we can connect to one another, and that we can embrace all the parts of ourselves and of one another. So I just thank you so much for being on this panel and for sharing your insights. And I hope that we can continue these conversations.